My name's Maurice. I'm going to be hosting the panel today. I am a native New Yorker, born and bred. I used to work in the fashion industry, doing small-scale production in the garment center. But I had neighbors mining Bitcoin on home computers in 2011 and 12, and I kind of stuck around it ever since. In the Q1 2021, I had the opportunity to go full-time crypto. At the time I said crypto, now I say Web3. And ran with the opportunity. I found a community on Solana that coalesced around NFTs that created an opportunity for me that I could never have imagined. And ever since then, I've been focused on the intersection of NFTs and DeFi. Today, I'm an elected executive at MonkeyDAO, which is arguably the biggest and most important NFT-based DAO on Solana. We're in the process of buying out the IP from the current owners, which is quite a dramatic situation. But I just wanted to give my little intro and then let our other panelists say hello. Sid, maybe you want to say hi.
Cool, thanks, Maurice. My name is Sid Gandhi. I come from a traditional Web 2 background. I used to work at Apple for many years on iOS frameworks. If you've ever used Hey Siri, Get Me an Uber, I was a tech lead on that. Super fun project. After that, I worked in cybersecurity for a little bit, and then most previous to founding Polybase, I was at Cruise building autonomous vehicles. Most specifically, I was working on the simulation framework. So we actually built like a whole GTA type city, and then we had our software drive a car in that city and try to not hit people. And then this was like the beginning of last year. I basically teamed up with my co-founder. We ended up interviewing like about 100 or 200 Web3 developers. And we found a bunch of challenges that they were facing, mainly around how they were storing data. They were trying to store data on chain. Obviously, storing data on chain is very expensive. And they wanted a better way to do that. Most of them were using traditional Web 2 databases. So if you've heard of like Postgres or MongoDB, they were using those databases, and we basically felt that there was this huge gap for a Web3 database. So we ended up building that. I do have a fun, like, short Bitcoin story. So this was like 2012, 2011 maybe, and Bitcoin was $8, and I found it online. I was like, this is really cool. I'm not like an anarchist type guy or anything like that, but I was like, this is going to take everything over. Told my friends about it. They were like, this is obviously a scam, right? Like, what coin? So I had like $20. At that time, you had to like MoneyGram, like, so you had to like send something from a Walgreens to like a MoneyGram to someone, and they would maybe deposit into your wallet. So I had everything ready to go. I had $20. You put in the envelope, sitting on my desk. Turns out my friends wanted to go to Taco Bell. We were in college. We didn't have that much money. That $20 got spent on Taco Bell. Never bought Bitcoin until probably like 2015, 2016. But yeah, that's my story of the $100,000 burrito.
Thank you for sharing. Many of us might be aware of the $22 million pizza or something like that. It was pretty fun. Thanks, Sid. Shivay, please.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Shivay. I'm from India, fluent from India, so super excited for this event. This is actually my first ever NFT or even a Web3 event, so I'm super excited. But even I come from a non-traditional Web3 background. I just graduated in 2020, and for the past 3 years I've been working with a number of different startups. I do love startup culture, by the way, and all of my experience with Web3 is just related to my personal interest in the subject. And so currently I'm working with a startup called Millisearch. It's a Rust-based search engine, and that kind of helped me get into background of Solana, which is of course Rust-based. But primarily my experience started with building on Hyperledger. So Hyperledger is an open source series of blockchains networks, and I was part of the Hyperledger mentorship program and building something called as the Hyperledger Umbra, which is basically a suite of different testing tools that can test out different set of blockchains that are there inside the entire Hyperledger network. And since then, I've been more fascinated about using WebAssembly as a means to be able to replace something like EVM and primarily deploying your smart contracts or your blockchains on edge devices, because I am really a huge advocate for being able to run your software or any piece of code very efficiently on edge devices. So that's my experience. Yeah, over to you, ESKOH.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, ESKOH.
Hey everyone, thank you for your time. Like Maurice, I'm born and raised in New York City. I come from a multi-generational family of inventors. We've invented something you've used called HDMI technology. HDMI, as you know, standardizes video. Now I'm on the cusp of commercializing a new technology called proof of reception. A little bit about my background. In addition to being raised in New York, I went to the Wharton School for my undergrad, so started in finance and business. And I'm also very deeply involved in music. I'm a multi-platinum music producer. I was one of the first people to introduce K-pop to the US market, working with groups behind the songs like Gangnam Style and some of the famous ones you may have come across. And fast forward to 2016, when I was traveling between South Korea and the US, I was tapped by the early co-founders of Ethereum to help them expand into Asia, created an interesting arbitrage situation called the Kimchi Premium, where we were able to buy crypto on US exchanges and sell in South Korea for multiple times what we paid for in the US within a short amount of time. Got kind of more deeply entrenched into the tech of things, and even though kind of Web3, blockchain, crypto kind of promotes this mission of decentralization, consulted a lot with the early blockchain players, and Vitalik pointed out a problem called the blockchain trilemma, where over time, blockchains suffer from lack of decentralization, scalability, and insecurity. So I kind of went back to the drawing board with some of the leading computer scientists and invented a brand new consensus mechanism called proof of reception. And within the proof of reception consensus mechanism, the reception is the finality of the transaction. So rather than depending on third-party mining or staking nodes that charge a gas fee, that create other compromises and delays, now via POR on your edge device, you can self-validate your transaction because all of our values are online in some repository. Even our money is in a banking database. So via APIs, we prove our values to one another. And as long as you receive what you want and I receive what I want, that's the finality of the transaction. And that's how we're making everyone into their own oracle, validator, and also ultimate storage of your transactions.
Thanks, ESKOH. I was really fascinated meeting my panelists and kind of coming to understand where they come from and what they do, and our backgrounds are all so different. And you know, it's Friday and it's been a long week, and I kind of wanted to keep the rest of this panel pretty light and on a very high level, surface level of like the future of NFT ownership. We are all living in this right now, and we're all kind of seeing it develop in a few different ways. Art, collectibles, property in the real world have these massive industries built up around them, but we're finding that to execute that in Web3, it's not quite as simple, or the traction hasn't gotten there yet. So I just kind of wanted to throw this to the panel and get your guys' take on, you know, what do you foresee as the future of NFT ownership?
I'll start. Okay.
Yeah.
I think like JPEG NFTs, right?
Sure.
That brought everyone to understand what NFTs are and to engage with them. That's kind of the first generation. And I think we started seeing really cool applications of utility NFTs beyond that. I'm definitely excited about credentialing.
Like reputation?
Like reputation, yes, and being able to build up reputation over time. If you think about Web 1 or Web 2 identity, it's really based on email. And all the data attached to your email is actually in all these separate places. So like Google has maybe your first name, last name, maybe your address. Spotify knows like what songs you like. GitHub knows what code you've pushed. So it's all separate, and it's really hard to use that data to access new things. One example that I really like of like permissionless innovation on top of this is, imagine that Starbucks has, they have the Odyssey program that's not really advertised as NFTs to users.
Digital collectibles.
Polygon loves talking about Starbucks, but Starbucks never talks about Polygon, which is kind of funny. But imagine like the rewards being an NFT attached to your wallet, right? That doesn't really give too much value in and of itself. Like it's the same as having your Starbucks rewards card. But now imagine Blue Bottle Coffee comes in, and Blue Bottle is like, you know what? I want to target Starbucks customers in a particular location, or just in general, to come to Starbucks, right? You want to vampire attack Starbucks. Now, what they could do is they could actually just airdrop discounts to anyone that holds a Starbucks NFT, rewards NFT.
Digital collectible.
Right, digital collectible. And that's permissionless. They didn't have to ask anyone. They didn't have to go through any agreements or anything. They were able to do that automatically, and now they could time lock that. They could say, you have to use this 50% Blue Bottle discount in the next 3 days or something. That's a kind of marketing like tactic that hasn't really been possible or used that much, and it's not targetable. Now you might say, okay, why would Starbucks put the collectible like on chain? But you can do it with complementary services. So you could have Starbucks, you could target Starbucks users, and maybe you want to sell them pastries, or maybe you want to sell them some other complementary product to a coffee. And you can do that in a permissionless way without having to go through like a business development relationship with Starbucks, sign some agreement, go through that whole process. You can just go and airdrop people discounts to come to your product. So stuff like that isn't really possible today, or is very difficult, or you need to know people. That's something that I'm really, really interested in.
Thanks, Sid. ESKOH, I'd like to throw it to you next. You know, you're a technologist, you're an entertainer, you have a long history in this field, and I think we hit on a few topics just now. Specifically, this idea of like NFT versus digital collectible, I think that's fascinating, and I know for me trying to communicate with, let's just say a layman or a retail investor or someone who's not deep in this ecosystem, NFT automatically is associated with a scam or something that is just price go up and then you're going down, and there's all of these dynamics that people can't really understand. But as soon as you change the label and you make it a Reddit digital collectible, which is actually an on-chain NFT, people's perception completely changes. So I'd love to hear what you might have to say.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, people don't know what TCP/IP is, but we all use the internet, right? Yep. So it's really about how do we connect with the mainstream customer and make this frictionless. So within our ecosystem of POR, proof of reception, we call it a portion, right? You can portion anything, based on your credentials, your content, and so forth and so on. But in order to really make it frictionless from a technical point of view, proof of reception allows you to plug into any interface and then plug in your bank account, so that the bank account reception of cash from your account to my account can release my portion to you. So to kind of make this more tangible, some use cases we've commercialized with big institutions. One is we've worked with United Nations organizations to allow Ukrainian refugees to self-validate their biometric, their geolocation via their phone, to prove that that portion proves that they're in Ukraine, to prove where they want to receive payment. During the onset of the Russian invasion, there weren't many banks that were open, so they used a lot of TransferWise, which is kind of the European equivalent of Venmo. So, now we allow a paradigm where it removes the friction, allows you to plug in your money, allows you to exchange that for portions or NFTs or digital collectibles directly in real time, and finally, it also is not only helping charities, but now musicians with my music background. Me, when I upload something on YouTube or Spotify, I only get a fraction of a penny per stream. Now I can determine my own smart contract, or what we call POR traits, of what is needed to validate the access to my content. So we're moving away from kind of these third-party validator schemes that kind of manipulate the relationship from end to end, and allowing people to also self-validate their own contracts, because even with EVM, which you're moving away from, you have to depend on a third party. You have to pay a gas fee to a third party. And the more links there are in the transaction, the more vulnerabilities there are for hackers. So I see a future where, just like in the real world, how you're self-validating my words, that's how we want to kind of create the human intelligence on the online world, and really bring back, the barter system of our ancestors, where instead of trading, like a fish for a wheel, now we can trade, fiat for JPEG and get rid of all the intermediaries that manipulate that transaction.
It's fascinating. I think like the trajectory of taking the JPEG PFP and watching that narrative play out to now the shift in conversation has gone to real world assets and fine art. And where I am on Solana, there's a massive community of artists and people trying to basically extract or add value in a system that has historically only extracted value from them. And I think that's a core tenet that we have to continually come back to. Web3, NFTs, DeFi, crypto. The whole point is to give power back to the users and not be value extractive. Web3, Web2, Web1, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they all use us. We are their product and they sell our data. I think this is our opportunity to kind of take the power back, for loss of a better term. I'd love to hear your comment, Shivay.
Yeah, and I think just going on from where you left, ESKOH, what I feel is that the future is also partial ownership, right? So basically using a lot of the NFT principles, but for things like loan. Because so far we have not really seen that kind of pitch in. It's still one-to-one transfer of the NFT ownership if you're, like, say, talking about collectibles. But like, let's say you're talking about the banking industry, and if you're talking about how generally like loans take place, and to provide better identification and authorization for these loan transfers, I think like partial ownership will go a long way. And I think that's where even a lot of the collectibles and these artists who are building these collectibles, they can also benefit from the partial ownership, where they might be able to share some of their intellectual property, like the IP of whatever they're building, but on a partial front, not completely transferring it.
Super cool. Yeah, there's actually a few solutions currently. I'm deeply embedded in the Solana ecosystem, which is not something everyone likes to talk about, but we are innovating a lot, and there's a lot of loan platforms competing at the moment. I'm building one, and one of the approaches for some of these assets is tokenization and fractionalization, and to be able to take like a property in Texas, fractionalize the ownership, and everybody's able to take a little bit of rent once a month. That's a fascinating application, and something else I've been researching is like the real world assets. So whiskey or gold or sneakers, even trying to trade those IRL is very hard. I mean, you'd have to travel with it, authenticate it, store it, and these opportunities to tokenize real world assets and then enable trading and lending in a much more seamless fashion, like that's the future for me. Yeah, I'd love to just throw it to you guys, and if you have any comments, I'm gonna.
Yeah, I think all those different values you mentioned, loans to JPEGs, they're all a form of an NFT, right? They're all a unique data record on some ledger somewhere, proving provenance. So, as this world, I think this world in the last couple of years, really gave us the mindset, and now it's time to really build the solutions that, make a true decentralization versus, kind of like smoke and mirrors, and like you said, all about pump and dumps and stuff like that.
Totally. Yeah. It's a perfect segue. One of the only questions I wrote down was for Sid. What role do you believe decentralized finance will play in the future of NFT ownership, particularly in terms of fractionalizing NFTs, creating new investment opportunities, and offering an innovative financial products and services tied to NFTs?
Yeah, I didn't get these questions beforehand, or maybe you posted it.
I did.
Okay, so I didn't prepare.
We're all quite busy.
I think what NFTs give you is tying the flow of money to ownership. So you can basically go, and if you have income coming in from like rent on a property, you can then distribute that equally and send it to all the fractionalized owners easily without any kind of intermediary. But the cool thing you can do is then trade your portion on a secondary market. And as rent prices go up and down, those derivative assets change. So that's super interesting to me.
Fascinating.
You can do the same thing with like digital collectibles. If a particular digital collectible is getting more offers, or it gets more rewards, or it gets more benefits, you can actually go and then trade that on the secondary market. So everything about NFTs, to me, the interesting part is being able to permissionlessly trade your ownership on a secondary market as prices go up and down.
Self-custody.
Exactly. And then without having to do any legal work. Because theoretically, you could write a legal agreement that fractionalizes, property, spreads payments, amongst the owners. That's kind of like a traditional corporate or LLC type setup. Takes time to set up. If you want to do, special interesting things like you can only hold that portion for 6 months and you have to sell it, or like kind of unique characteristics around that. Cool. You have to get a lawyer involved. That's going to take you down that road. And then it becomes like kind of inaccessible. Like how are you going to trade that? It's not really fungible. It's not really tradable and liquid.
All the infrastructure.
Exactly, and that goes like on a private market, and then if you can throw that on OpenSea, if you can throw that on any secondary market, and people can go see what the value is, what the last 5 rent payments are, and then they can make their own calculation of like where they think that price is going to go. So.
Super cool. We're getting down to 4 minutes, and I want to make sure everybody gets like a closing remark. You could say whatever you want, but I'd love to kind of instigate. What are you most excited about for the future of NFTs today and this year, and how do you see things developing right now, short term? Sean, you could take it away.
Yeah, I also go by Sean. In addition to ESKOH, just in case you're confused. But I just kind of figured out where people are not talking too much about the technical side of things, and this just flows naturally, with your kind of daily activity. What I really believe that, everyone should be their own validator, everyone should be kind of their own custodian, and everyone should validate one another. We're at a point where all of our personal values, even our money, is stored in some database somewhere where we can prove the provenance of our transactions by plugging into them via APIs and what we call a port, a proof of reception terminal. So we just want to kind of usher in this way where this mindset, this technology can become ubiquitous. And just like we've already proven where recipients can self-validate themselves for donations in Ukraine, and artists can self-validate their content for money from fans. Now we're going into where investors can self-validate their money directly with owners of assets and trade those portions as well. And we'd love to invite you to kind of our exclusive stealth phase. But I'm honored to be here with you guys. And
thanks, ESKOH.
Thank you, Maurice, for really holding it down.
Appreciate you, ESKOH.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like my closing remarks are pretty much based on what we have seen as how NFTs have been perceived in the past, right? People talking about, hey, that NFTs are all just about monkey ape drawings being sold to each other. But what I think as we uncover a lot of these use cases that we talked about, like the fractionalization and of course like having more NFT ownership coming in multiple areas, that would help to improve the perception of NFT ownership and encourage other businesses and other industries to actually adopt to this, right? And of course, we have seen that there is a lot of benefit in actually having this kind of a model, especially when it comes to proper authorization of who is the true owner of that particular asset and how easily you can manage your asset management and the transfer of the ownership with the help of NFTs. So in the near future, I just see that people's perception will change as we see more of these use cases uncover and become more production ready.
Thank you.
Closing remarks. I think I just have like one thing to say, which is like, come for the hype, stay for the value, and we're kind of currently in the middle of that, right? And I think the best thing is to keep asking this question. I ask this question to myself and my team every day, which is, what's something new you can do with Web3 technology that you couldn't do before? And most of the people I talk to actually can't answer that question in a really clear, coherent way. But the people that can are working on really, really cool stuff. And so I always like to think like, you think about the gold rush in California, you came for the hype, and then eventually it's like, oh, this is actually a really good port to import stuff from Asia. Okay, well, there's a whole space and industry for silicon, like chip creation. Oh, we have universities, now we can build software companies with all that talent that's coming out. So I think we're like kind of right there where it's like we all came for the hype. We all know there's something here, we all know there's something interesting, a lot of money is in here. but keep asking yourself, like, what's something truly new that we can do that we couldn't do before? Whether that's human coordination, automation, permissionlessness, and yeah, build something cool.
I love that so much. I don't even want to add anything to it. I'd love to leave it on that note. Mic drop. Thanks everybody for coming. The last thing I will add is I would just support everyone in being open-minded if this is your first time discovering NFTs or crypto or DeFi. I came into the space and work 18, 20 hours a day and wouldn't change a single thing. I love it. And I love what I do, and I'm pretty sure everybody up here loves what they do, and I think that's something that needs to be communicated to those that are new to the ecosystem, is we absolutely love crypto, NFTs, DeFi. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.